what's going on, guys? Hope you're having a great day, and today we've got another Galaxy of Heroes video about mods, everyone's favorite subject, yay! Today is going to be a tough one. It's also going to be a long video, so timestamps down in the description. We're going to talk about mods for bounty hunters. There are a lot of bounty hunters, and important to note, there are a lot of bounty hunters with different leads. Like, all the bounty hunters different leads, so they can all be subject to change based on who your lead is. Today, mine is going to be under the assumption of a Bossk lead. However, if you're doing an Embo lead, Jango lead, it could be a little bit different. So just know mine is going to be under the assumption of a Bossk lead, because I think typically that's most common. However, I know there is that group of people that are very, very, very staunch Embo lead defenders. I'm not going to say anything bad about Embo lead. Just going to say we're going to talk about Bossk lead today. So let's go ahead and let's hop into the roster and let's talk about bounty hunters. As you can see, bounty hunters are not my strongest part of my roster. I don't have, it's something after I get Galactic Legends Kylo Ren, I definitely want to increase some of my bounty hunters like Greef, Mando, Jango. I definitely want to make my bounty hunters a more solid piece of my roster. It's just not there yet, but we can still talk about the mods. I went ahead and just made some loadouts for the different characters. So let's start in with our lead, or I'm going to pretend as our lead, and that's going to be Bossk. Now, for Bossk, I am going to say a good recommendation is to have defense and tenacity mods. I would go with defense over health and protection, over health mods, because he is going to have 100% extra defense whenever he is at full health. And with his lead, he's going to, as long as you have the Zeta, passively recover health and protection every time someone either gets or resists a debuff from the enemy team. So I would go defense, I would go speed on the arrow. You still want him to be pretty fast so he can get out there, he can taunt, he can get his frenzy going. So I'd put speed on the arrow. On the triangle, I would go defense. On the cross, I would go one of two ways. You could go defense or you could go tenacity. Really, I think either way is a good choice. I went with defense personally, but tenacity is also very important for Bossk. However, he is also going to get extra tenacity from his lead, so you might not need it. I would experiment around, see what works and what doesn't. You really could go either way with this. On his circle, I think either health or protection is going to be good. You might do protection instead of health, just because you want him to stay at full protection. So we might even change this to protection, because if he's down to where you're chipping away at his health, you're gonna be in probably bad shape. I don't have very many tenacity mods with protection, unfortunately, but just know, I think maybe I would go protection there just so he keeps that extra defense. And then other areas to focus, speed is gonna be very important. Potency is very nice so that on his call to assist, you can land his stun. And then defense, anything that adds to his survivability is going to be very nice for a secondary. He's your tank, you want him to stay alive as long as possible, keep the taunt on, just to be super annoying and let the rest of the team do their job and get the damage out. Now, next up, let's go ahead and talk about Jango. Jango is the only person in here that I've given two different loadouts to, because I think you can play him one of two ways. You could play him with a speed set or a critical damage set. Jango, if he's in your lineup, is probably gonna be the biggest damage dealer that you have. He deals a crap ton of damage. So there is definitely an argument to be made for critical damage. You'll probably eke out a little bit more speed if you do a speed set, unless you just have some god tier speed secondaries on your critical damage mods. I would say it's dependent based on your specific mod set, or like what your inventory looks like. Either way, I think it's gonna look pretty similar regardless of how you do it. If you go the speed set, obviously, I'm gonna say this on, I think, every single character today. On your arrow, speed primary. We'll just say that now. On your triangle, when I went with the speed set, I think critical damage is probably the way to go, as long as you can maximize your critical chance on all of your secondaries, which obviously I don't have the mods to really show you that. But if you can up the critical chance on your secondaries, I think critical damage right here is really gonna do you a lot of good. Especially with Bounty Hunter's Resolve, he's going to get extra critical chance. So I would go ahead and do critical damage on your triangle. And then I would do defense mods, just again to go with Bossk's leadership ability. He's going to get he's going to get extra defense. So I would go ahead and do the defense mods. I would do potency with the cross, just for whenever he's doing his two special abilities, he can land all of those debuffs, which are going to be very important to him doing his thing and being effective. So I would go potency on the cross, and then just additional areas of focus. I would do speed is super important. Critical chance is going to be really nice. Offense is going to be really nice. And that's probably how I would do Jango. If you go with critical damage, I'm not sure that any of my recommendations are going to change. You might consider critical chance if you're doing critical damage, but I would honestly still probably do critical damage and just get as much damage output as you possibly can on our boy Jango. Everything else is going to stay the same. Now, let's hop over to another one that's pretty nice. Let's go and talk about Mando. Mando is a newer addition to the game, and I unfortunately just don't have him in a place that I can really use him yet, but I'm so excited when I do because he's going to be so much fun. There are a lot of really interesting ways to use him, especially with his Annihilate potential. And you're gonna see a lot of similarities between him and some of the other characters. I would go crit damage and crit chance. Critical chance on your secondaries is going to be super important because you want to make sure that he is landing those critical hits, because that is going to increase a lot of his buffs based on his kit. Let's go ahead and look at his kit really quick. On his basic, he's going to gain critical chance from his basic, so that is at least nice. He's going to get critical chance up whenever he does his basic. On a critical hit, he's going to grant another random bounty hunter ally critical chance up, which is nice. So again, we see the benefits of that critical chance. On his special, then assist the Mandalorian and assisting gain critical damage up for 2 turns. So you get the critical chance, you're going to get the critical damage up. That's very nice. His unique, Discipline Bounty Hunter. Each time the Mandalorian scores a critical hit, he gains 30% turn meter, and other Bounty Hunter allies gain half that amount. He's going to gain Bounty Hunter's Resolve as well. So every time he gets a critical hit, he's going to gain turn meter. Again, the critical hit is very, very important to him. And then his payout is going to be, he's going to get 50% critical damage, so you really, really want to be hitting those critical hits. And then he's going to get Disintegrate until the end of the battle, which is his Annihilate ability. Also, if you're using him as the lead, it's going to be while buffs score critical hits. I don't necessarily know that I would use him as a lead, but if you did, again, those critical hits are going to be so important. So that is why I would probably recommend doing the critical chance, and then the critical damage is going to be huge for him. So that is probably how I would do Mando. Again, speed on the arrow, critical damage on the triangle. Just make sure that you can give him a significant amount of critical chance on the secondaries if possible. And then on the cross, I would probably do offense just to increase his damage output. On a secondary note, I would go speed is very important. Critical chance is going to be very important. Those would be my 2 main areas of focus. All right, another super interesting addition to the game was Greef Karga. Greef Karga is super interesting because he is a support bounty hunter, and he's also light side, just like Mando. Very different, but he's got a super interesting kit, and he's there to support all the allies, give them health, protection up, give them buffs, increase benefits whenever they get their payouts. So the big one for Greef Karga is going to be speed. You want to max him out with as much speed as you possibly can. So it goes without saying, speed on the arrow, and then all of your secondaries need to be focused on speed. I went with defense just because you want to give him as much survivability as possible. You want him to stick around as long as you can. He's going to gain stealth and some other things whenever, payouts are granted and stuff like that, but you want him to stay around. So defense, I think, is going to be key. So I go defense. Defense secondaries are very nice, and then speed, of course, as a secondary is a must. On your cross, you could go a couple of different ways. I went with tenacity just because I don't want him getting stunned. I don't want him getting dazed, stuff like that, because I need him to keep taking as many turns as possible, especially because a lot of bounty hunters call to assist. They grant turn meter around. So I went with tenacity. You could go with defense. You could go with something else. But I really think that I'm going to go with the tenacity as opposed to like a defense cross. After that, I think, once again, health or protection, just whatever gets you more speed, honestly, because speed is really what's going to make Greef tick. All right, so now let's go back to some of our oldies but goodies. Boba Fett, gonna be huge for you. Boba Fett's he's going to be a big character in bounty hunters for most people. He's very early on, he's very easy to get. I would go critical damage and potency. I would go potency because you really want him, if possible, go first, because you want him to land that AoE that's going to get ability block. It's always very clutch to have that. I would go on the arrow. Once again, speed's going to be important. As your secondaries, I would go speed, critical chance, potency are going to be your big ones. On your triangle, I would go critical damage, especially with his wrist rocket. He is going to be dealing so much damage for that. I mean, it's not an annihilate, but it has annihilate potential with how much damage he can do. So I would go critical damage on that. And then maximize his critical chance through all the secondaries wherever possible. As much critical chance as he can get, so he's gritting those critical hits. He's also going to get that critical chance through Bounty Hunter's Resolve, so just remember that. On his cross, potency. You need to be landing those debuffs, so I'm gonna go with a potency cross. After that, again, survivability, speed, just whatever you can get on him, but I would say speed is very important. Potency, critical chance, all of that stuff. That's Boba Fett. Now let's move over to Dengar. Dengar is another really good bounty hunter. And for his, this one's a little different in that I'm gonna go with 3 different sets. Critical chance, potency, and defense. Defense for the survivability. Let's look at his kit, just to talk about why I would go with those. So target spotted, deal physical damage to the target enemy. If the enemy is suffering from any debuffs, there's a 60% chance to call an ally to assist. If the assisting ally is a scoundrel, they're going to guarantee a critical hit. Well, they should be a scoundrel because you should be on a bounty hunter team, so that should be fine. Now, blast and smash. Deal physical damage to target enemy with a 75% chance to inflict speed down. That's where the potency is going to be really important. If the target had 50% turn meter, they are also stunned. So once again, really, really important for that potency. So going to be very nice. Mini Mine, Mayhem. Now deal physical damage to all enemies. Now deal physical damage to 2 random enemies, dealing 50% less damage. Then inflict negative status effects on all enemies that suffer a critical hit. Effects inflicted depend on the number of critical hits scored. That is why critical chance is going to be so important for Dengar. Now, on 1 critical hit, he's going to inflict tenacity down. On 2 critical hits, damage over time. And then on 3 critical hits, 50% turn meter reduction. So once again, critical chance, potency, really starting to shine through. On his unique, he's going to receive, whenever he receives a critical hit, so whenever he is critically hit, he's going to gain stealth, which makes him really hard to target, which is really nice. He is also going to gain 60% turn meter whenever an enemy evades one of his attacks. And then whenever he suffers a negative status effect, he's going to gain tenacity up. He's got so many things, it's a paragraph to read. And then while he has stealth, enemies can't gain stealth. And then he's also going to recover 3% health and protection, adding to that survivability. And then his payout, he's going to gain 25% offense and speed until the end of the battle. And while he's stealth, he has a 60% chance to assist. Again, critical chance meaning he's going to deal more damage whenever he's called to assist. So that is why, personally, that's why I would go with the critical chance, potency, and defense mods, just to kind of really make him an all-encompassing, well-rounded character. On the arrow, once again, speed. On the triangle, I'm going with critical chance. You could go critical damage. I think the critical chance is just so important. He does have 51% base critical chance at gear 13, so he already does have high critical chance. So you could get away with doing critical damage here. I personally am going for the critical chance. On the cross, potency, because you have to be landing those debuffs. All right, let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about Embo. Embo is another one. Unfortunately, we're not talking about Embo lead today. I know there are some staunch Embo lead supporters, but Embo can deal so much damage. He can deal an insane amount of damage. So I'm going, as I did for Mando, critical chance and critical damage mods. On the arrow, speed maximizes critical chance as much as possible with the secondary. Speed is also going to be huge. On the cross, or I'm sorry, on the triangle, critical damage, and then on the cross, offense. He is going to be just blasting people away, so give him as much offense as possible in the form of offense, critical chance, and critical damage. Now, on his circle, I would go with protection, and let's go to his kit to look at why. So, go back, come on. So for Embo's kit, I believe it's his war helmet. He is going to deal physical damage to the target enemy. This attack is going to deal bonus damage equal to 35% of Embo's max protection. So a protection secondary is going to be very nice. Then Embo is going to lose 50% of his protection. Definitely worth it, because on his payout, I think it's his payout, he is going to, nope, I'm sorry, it's his unique. He is also going to, when he has protection, he's going to gain 30% critical chance. When Embo receives damage, if he has no protection, he's going to gain foresight. So it's okay that you're losing that protection, because he's going to gain it back with the Bossk lead, and then he's also going to gain foresight and other stuff when he doesn't have it. But just so much damage output from this character. So as far as Embo goes, that's the way that I would go about it. Critical chance and critical damage. All right, now let's move on to some of the less popular choices for your bounty hunter squad. Let's start with Aurra Sing, because she has her uses in the raids, but especially as a lead if you're going to run Mando and Greef Karga, because her payout, her contract is one of the easiest to pay out, which can really quickly get you to that annihilate with Mando, especially with Bounty Hunter's Resolve gives you your pick of who you want to annihilate. So Aurra Sing is actually very popular as a lead. So this is going to be a little bit different, but critical damage and critical chance, because she can have huge damage output. especially in the heroic Sith raid, because whenever someone is toppled, she's going to deal 200% damage. I think it's damage or critical damage. I can't remember which, but it's going to be a lot. Speed is going to be important for her. I would do critical damage, just maximize her damage output on that triangle. And then on her cross, I would do either potency so that she lands that stun on her basic. That's going to be really huge. I would probably go off potency. You could go offense for the extra damage output, but that stun on her basic is going to be huge. So I would go potency personally. And then on your secondaries, critical chance, speed are going to be big, more potency from the secondaries. And that's probably how I would do Aurra Sing. Now let's move on to another one. Cad Bane, it's not that great. I've got him. I used him to get Chewbacca, but honestly, if you're going for a good bounty hunter team, Cad Bane probably doesn't have a place in it. He's not terrible, but he's not great. I would go critical damage and critical chance. You just want to maximize. You want to get as much critical chance on him as possible because he's going to gain turn meter whenever he lands a critical hit. So I would go speed on the arrow. On the triangle, I would do critical damage. Just make him do as much damage as possible. And then on the cross, I would do offense. You could also do potency. So he lands a stun so that he's landing his accuracy down because whenever he inflicts a debuff, I believe he gains turn meter. So I would probably go offense probably. You could also make an argument for potency. Let's check out his kit really quick just to make sure I'm not lying to you. Go back, come on. Cad Bane. Let's take a look. For the right prize, when he inflicts a debuff, he recovers health and protection. My apologies. He also, whenever he scores a critical hit, he has a 50% chance to reduce his cooldowns by 1. Again, making that critical hit so important, and that's why the critical chance is going to be key for him. So I would say potency or critical or offense really could go either way there for Cad Bane. And then after that, for your secondaries, I would try to do speed. I would try to do critical chance potency on your secondaries wherever possible. All right, let's move on. We're gonna skip Greedo for now. Poor Greedo. We'll skip him. We'll come back. Greedo, just sad guy. But let's go on to IG-88. So IG-88, again, probably not gonna be in the top tier of bounty hunters. If you're doing a bounty hunter team, I wouldn't shoot for IG-88. Obviously, you can see mine's not that bad, but I wouldn't go for it. He's definitely not the best bounty hunter out there. If you are running IG-88, critical chance and critical damage are gonna be huge. You want him to have a potency cross. That's going to be huge because you need to let him to land his debuffs. His basic can land healing immunity. His special can inflict target lock. And he's got so many specials whenever he attacks someone as target lock. So potency is going to be key on his arrow. We're going to want speed, just like normal. And then on his cross, I would do critical chance or critical damage. I'm personally going to do critical chance because I want him to land those critical hits because that's how he's going to land his, that's how he's going to land his target lock. You could do critical damage though if you have enough critical chance on your secondaries. And then on your secondaries, I would go speed, I would go critical chance, I would go potency. That's IG-88. All right, next let's go on to Zam. I don't have a lot of good things to say about Zam. She's gonna do a lot with, she's gonna be doing a lot with thermal detonators, so potency is gonna be important. Pair her up with Greedo if you're gonna do that, but again, I wouldn't recommend either Zam or Greedo, honestly. Speed on the arrow. Zam is pretty fast, so a speed set is going to benefit her, so I'm going speed and potency. Critical chance is going to be nice. I would do defense, honestly, on her triangle, just to keep her around, because she's going to be inflicting a lot of thermal detonators. Let the thermal detonators, let her detonating those do all the work for you. Just keep her around as long as possible. So I'm going for a defense mod on the triangle, which is a little different. Try to get as much potency, critical chance, and speed as you can on your secondaries. On your cross, it's going to be potency. You need her to be landing those debuffs whenever possible. Get those thermal detonators. So I'm going to go potency on the cross. And then aside from that, on all of her secondaries, you're going to want to go for speed, critical chance, potency. You know, that's the name of the game here. All right, last and let's be honest, probably least is going to be Greedo. Greedo, I just don't have very many good things to say about Greedo. He's super squishy. He might be, I'm not positive, I haven't looked at the stats, he might be the squishiest bounty hunter there is. He's just not super great. I would go 2 sets of critical chance and 1 set of potency. Potency on the cross, because you want him to be landing those thermal detonators. The critical chance is going to be important because with his special ability, he is going to reduce turn meter based on his critical chance stat, and he is going to also increase his own turn meter based on how much he has reduced. So potency, critical chance are going to be very important. I would do critical chance or critical damage on his triangle, depends on how much critical chance you can get out of his secondaries, and then on his arrow, I would do speed. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about Greedo. So guys, that's all I've got to say about bounty hunters. Like I said, it's going to vary greatly based on who you have as your lead, but hopefully you guys found this helpful. If you did, please drop a like. It makes me feel good to know that you guys find this helpful. It also helps other people find the video. And if you feel so inclined, hit the subscribe button and don't forget that notification bell so you get notifications for any new videos or live streams, and we will talk to you guys in a later video. Have a great one. Thanks.
Get down to the B-side.